Should the supreme leader in Iran be worried right now?
I would say he should be very worried, yeah, he should be. As you know, they're negotiating with us. They were thinking about starting a new site in a different part of the country. We found out about it. I said, you do that, we're going to do very bad things to you.
Yep, that's the latest from the president yesterday, speaking with NBC News. So let's take a quick look at what's at stake and who the players are in the Middle East now, where we could be looking at another conflict. First off, two incidents happened 2 days ago. First off, the Iranian boats threatened a tanker. We have a merchant ship, and it was told to pull over. We're boarding you. You know what they did? They went faster straight ahead. You know what they got? Naval relief, and that fast boat was pushed away. And then they sent a Shahed drone. 500 was picked up heading towards USS Abraham Lincoln. It was knocked out of the sky. It's a one-way drone. They're almost on a suicide. They're suicide drones, not to come back. And it was knocked out of the sky. What was the point of that? We'll discuss it in a moment. Who are the players in the region and what do they stand for? Well, there's going to be talks beginning today. They're going to take place in Oman. It's going to take place between Iran and the U.S. only. It was going to take place in Turkey, and it was going to have Egypt there and UAE and Saudi Arabia, perhaps, who is a rival of Iran. But all these countries have made it clear, at least publicly, they don't think we should be taking action in the region. They want us to go slowly and go into talks, and those talks are going to be discussing only one thing, and I don't think this is acceptable: their nuclear program. So here to discuss this is somebody who really knows the region extremely well, worked there for years, Benjamin Hall. Ben, great to see you. Your thoughts about where this is heading as our assets spread out throughout the region?
Look, I think, first of all, Iran is playing with fire at the moment. They've got these talks on Friday, but I think that they have shot themselves in the foot. They've made it very clear they're only going to talk about their nuclear program. President Trump and the administration have made it very clear they want to talk about limiting their missiles. They want to talk about proxies, ceasing their financing of proxies. Iran's not going to talk about that. And so they are coming to the table to discuss two different issues. And I think President Trump is not going to be fooled at the way the Obama regime was fooled. Talk for 20 months over nuclear. Something has to happen quickly, and it won't. And so I think that Iran is on its knees. You see the protests, you see the economy all down low, you see the armada of U.S. missiles and ships around it. I think that the talks won't go very well, and after that, I think there will be some action.
So it looks like we've bolstered up our defense platforms, and some of the targets of us could be our bases in Qatar. It could be some of our presence over in Iraq amongst the Iranian militias. But for the President of the United States, he also sent the C-130s there. They could be used for sea, ocean, for rescue operations. Do you believe our assets are in place? Do you believe the Israeli assets are in place?
We've been watching a lot of the planes flying over. We've, a lot of reports that the THAAD, the Patriot missile defenses are in place at this point. I think that the naval aspect is important because Iran's greatest weapon is still shutting the Straits of Hormuz. I think what they feel their greatest strength is if the U.S. attacks and they can shut the Straits of Hormuz, even temporarily, they can get oil prices up to $150, $200 a barrel. And at that point, they think President Trump might have to pull back. So what's happening in the Straits of Hormuz and the Navy, I think, is really critical right now. But yes, they're going to respond, first of all, by attacking missile bases in the U.S., or rather, U.S. bases in the region. And I think the U.S. is prepared for that. Israel certainly is prepared for that, and their patriots are ready.
Here's the Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, yesterday on what could be taking place in these talks and what we would do.
Look, I think in order for talks to actually lead to something meaningful, they will have to include certain things. And that includes the range of their ballistic missiles. That includes their sponsorship of terrorist organizations across the region. That includes the nuclear program, and that includes the treatment of their own people.
Treatment of their own people, they don't care. They were mowing them down, 30 to 50,000 dead in cold blood. So what could the targets be for the U.S.? Where would we aim?
Yeah, it's a big question. And I've been speaking and getting messages from people inside Iran, by the way, who say this is not finished, that they are cowering inside. They don't know how to counter the regime. They're praying for the U.S. to come and help them. They really want it. The big question is, how do you get rid of the IRGC? Look, you could perhaps, and it's a big move, take out someone like the Ayatollah, then get rid of the theocratic regime. But the IRGC across a country the size of Iran, which has 90 million people, is going to be very difficult. And I think the big question, as President Trump did with Venezuela, is can you create a system where you work with some of the powers that exist? Can you take out the leadership, perhaps some of the generals of the IRGC, and can you leave something in place that can work with the U.S.? Could they work with some politicians like Rouhani or Mousavi, former prime ministers, who could perhaps work with the U.S.? How do you create a system after limited strikes that creates a government that might work with the U.S.?
Because we don't want to be picking up the trash. We don't want to be running that country. We don't want to have so-called regime change. But do you think the intelligence relies with the Israelis? Do you think, since they have identified the generals who to kill, do you think they've identified any politicians who possibly might be compliant?
There are some, and it's incredible to see how Mossad has operated inside Iran and how they're able to pick out targets how they want. But yes, many people talk about Rouhani, many people talk about Mousavi. These are politicians who, Mousavi is under house arrest, who could perhaps work well with the US, as well as some of the military forces that are still in Iran. And I know people want to hear that they're going to get rid of the military overall, but that can't be the case. As you said, you can't be picking up trash. So how do you go in? How does President Trump, if these nuclear talks don't go well, the talks don't go well.
And they're not going to go well.
They're not going to go well, I suspect. But limited strikes, take out the generals, take out some theocratic leaders. What's in place? We need to see cracks forming within the government. Once you see one person move, then it opens up the floodgates. In 1979, it was the Air Force that moved, and that changed the board game. One group needs to stand up against the regime and say, you know what? We're going to lead a path forward. We're going to work with the U.S. And you've got to hope that happens.
We really got to do. We really have to, because it could really change the whole region for the better for the first time in our lifetime. Thanks so much, Benjamin Hall.
I'm Steve Doocy.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube page to catch our hottest interviews and most compelling analysis.